We're going to be taking a look at the documents for Emmitt Martin, one of the Memphis police officers who was terminated in response to his involvement with the death of Tyre Nichols. This includes the statement of charges, the decertification, all of that.
Yeah.
The first thing that we have up is this change of status that's being submitted to the Tennessee Peace Officer Standards and Training Commission. Emmitt Martin III, Memphis Police Department. And let's scroll down here, and we're going to see the very first action that the city of Memphis took against him was to grant him leave. So he was on administrative leave from January 8th 2023. And you'll see it says down here, officer relieved of duty effective January 8th, 2023. And there is signed by the agency head. Then you have the separation. We now know that he, along with a number of other Memphis police officers, have been terminated. So you'll see there, Emmitt Martin III, Memphis Police Department, the separation. The effective date of that termination was January 20th, 2023, again signed by the agency head. Now, here is this piece. If you've watched one of these decertification videos before, then you know what's in this section. This is the decertification request that's being submitted. And this is the one that gets checked. The box down here that says suspended or discharged 30 days or longer, resign in lieu of termination, resign with disciplinary action pending that could have resulted in termination, or discharged by his or her employing law enforcement agency for disciplinary reasons. So he was terminated, and they are requesting that he be decertified. What I also like to point out here is that if a person resigns in lieu of termination, the agency can still seek that decertification. So they don't get a free pass if they go ahead and say, I'm going to resign and hope that that decertification doesn't go forward. It can still be submitted. And you see the date there. Now let's go through the statement of charges. As you know, Mr. Martin was part of the Scorpio unit. These are violations of the department's policies, the things that they're saying he did wrong. Now, this is a separate from these criminal charges that are pending. Remember, you have the manslaughter, the kidnapping, the assault, all of that is taking place in a criminal setting. What we're talking about here are the charges of policy, law, or regulations for his employment. And you'll see there we have personal conduct. They recommended termination, truthfulness. They had recommended termination, neglect of duty. They had recommended termination. And then you had this duty to intervene and reporting improper conduct, termination, excessive force, unnecessary force, termination. And then you had the compliance with regulations where they were recommending this 40-day leave. Now let's jump into the statement of particulars, because this is where they sort of lay out his involvement with what happened on January 7th. On January 7th, 2023, you and your partners initiated a traffic stop at E. Rains and Ross Road involving a suspected reckless driver who died at the hospital 3 days following a use of force incident. After your partner forced the driver out of the vehicle, you gained control of one of the subject's wrists. You claimed the subject attempted to grab your duty weapon from your holster positioned on the right side. Audio from a body worn camera did not capture the driver using profanity or displaying any violent threats. However, you made assaultive statements such as, "B, put your arm behind your back before I break it," and "I'm gonna knock the F out." After the subject was placed in custody at Castlegate Lane in Bear Creek Cove, you and other officers were captured on body worn camera making multiple unprofessional comments, such as, "That MF made me spray myself," laughing and bragging about your involvement. Your conversation and lack of concern for the injured subject was witnessed by a civilian who took photographs and cell phone video. The civilian's viewpoint was you and your partners left the injured subject lying on the ground, handcuffed and unattended. The report of the victim's death was broadcasted on both local and national media sites. The release of any digital evidence of you and your partner's actions will shed a bad light on the department and city of Memphis. Your on duty conduct was unjustly and blatantly unprofessional and unbecoming for a sworn public servant. Your actions place you in violation of the Personal Conduct Code. And before I get into that, let me just talk about this witness before. I mentioned it in a previous video. There's another video you can go back and take a look at that talks a little bit more about this secret witness, because although the video has been released and is available on Vimeo, the body worn camera video is what I'm talking about, and the skycop camera video, although that's available on Vimeo, we've only really heard about the civilian who captured photos and video on this. Like, we've only heard about this person on these decertification documents, these documents that were part of the individual packages. So it's going to be interesting in the end to see what additional evidence shows what happened on site that evening and how each separate individual may or may not have been doing certain things. That's going to be interesting to see. So far, we don't have any of that information yet, though. All right, let me go back to this document. So they have the personal conduct policy here that he violated. It says conduct of each member, both on and off duty, is expected to be such that it will not reflect adversely on other members of the department, the city of Memphis, etc. All right, let's go to this part about truthfulness. It says you are required to complete a response to resistance form to provide a truthful account of your use of force during your encounter with a suspect. In your incident summary, you reported the subject grabbed your duty weapon before you and your partner placed him on the ground. However, video evidence does not corroborate your statement in the report. During your Garrity statement, you were afforded the opportunity to review your use of force narrative and told ISB investigators that the details were correct. You failed to disclose you punched the subject in the face and kicked him multiple times on response to resistance form. Instead, you added to your ISB statement that you gave body blows. Both your oral and written statement was deemed deceitful. Your actions place you in violation of DR 108 truthfulness, which states a member shall not give any information, either oral or written, in connection with any assignment or investigation that is either knowingly incorrect, false, or deceitful. So it sounds like initially he failed to disclose the fact that he had punched and had, was it kicked? Let me look back at it again. He failed to disclose initially that he had punched the subject in the face and kicked him multiple times. So he didn't even really disclose this the first time. So then he came back and updated the information he had provided and said that he had provided body blows. And the department saying, look, we just find this to be deceitful, and this is not meeting our policy regarding truthfulness. Let's go to the next part here to see what's up next. Then it says, your use of force behavior caused visible injuries to a non-violent subject who evaded officers on foot for a suspected traffic violation. According to body-worn camera footage, you knew the subject was pepper sprayed, tased, struck with an ASP baton, punched, and kicked. You failed to recognize the victim's signs of distress and failed to disclose viable information to the responding emergency personnel to render proper medical attention. You and your partners also failed to immediately assist the emergency medical personnel with the request to unhandcuff the subject as his condition changed while left unattended on the ground. Your actions place you in violation of DR 120, neglect of duty, which states, so they have said these are the things that he didn't do, and here's the policy. Each member, because of his or her rank and assignment, is required to perform certain duties and assume certain responsibilities. Failure to properly function in these areas constitutes neglect of duty. And so you have that there. I'm not going to read all of that. All right, let's go to the next piece where they're saying he didn't properly intervene. During your encounter with a non-violent subject who is not complying with being handcuffed, you also witnessed another officer excessively strike him with the ASP baton multiple times, and another officer kicked the subject who was not being violent. You failed to take reasonable action to stop the excessive and unnecessary use of force, as the subject was not armed and only evading arrest on foot for a traffic violation. So the policy that they're now talking about is this duty to intervene and reporting improper conduct. Any member who directly observes another member engaged in dangerous or criminal conduct or abuse of a subject shall take reasonable action to intervene. A member shall immediately report to the department any violation of policies and regulations or any other improper conduct which is contrary to the policy, order, or directives of the department. For sworn employees, this reporting requirement also applies to allegations of uses of force not yet reported. So he was supposed to do something. And let's see what they go on to say. They say, you were the second contact officer on the traffic stop, at which time you assisted another officer to physically force the driver from the vehicle. That person did not display any violence toward you or other officers. He ran from you and two of your partners and was later apprehended at Castle Gate Lane and Bear Creek Cove shortly thereafter. As your partners were attempting to handcuff him, you kicked the individual 3 times in the upper torso area while he was on the ground. You also struck him with a closed fist in his face 5 times while his arms were being held by 2 officers. In your Garrity statement, you were unable to provide justification for the physical force, and the subject was not armed with a weapon. Your physical force during both encounters was not reasonable. Your actions place you in violation of excessive force and unnecessary force. And before I touch on that, there are some specific statements that I think they've made in this one that are very specific. At some point in time, it is very obvious that they had someone look at those videos and count those blows in terms of what he did and then also what other people did. Remember, it says you kick the individual 3 times, okay? You've got the number of times, and then it says in the upper torso. So they're letting you know 3 times and where you did it. And it says while he was on the ground. So not while he was standing up, not while he was, you know, I guess having this back and forth with you, him against you or something like that against the car. But no, he is on the ground. And so have really focused on the specifics here. It even goes on to say, because I want to point this out too, you also struck him with a closed fist in his face 5 times. Okay, closed fist in his face 5 times. And here's the piece, while his arms were being held by 2 officers. So how was he a threat at that moment in time? He's on the ground. His arms are now being held. He couldn't really hit you back. I cannot. He would have to first get himself away from these 2 officers that are holding him and then gather himself to hit you back. And you are there punching him with a closed fist in his face while he's just being held down. It says you were unable to provide any justification for this. He didn't have a weapon. There's no weapon on him. And so it says the physical force that was used here was not reasonable and was excessive. All right, so let me go back here to the document so that we can see what this next part says about excessive force and unnecessary force. So here's the policy. Force which is beyond the need and circumstances of a particular event or which is not justified in light of all circumstances, as it is the case of deadly force used to protect property as contrasted with protecting life. It says control may be achieved through advice, warnings, and persuasion, or by the use of physical force. While the use of reasonable physical force may be necessary in situations which cannot be otherwise controlled, force may not be resorted to unless other reasonable alternatives have been exhausted or would clearly be ineffective under the particular circumstances. Now, think about that for a second. It says you can't resort to force unless you've exhausted all of these other things. And yet, in this case, Mr. Martin has this closed fist where he's punching him in the face. This person's arms are being held by two other officers. It certainly does not appear to meet the policy here. So one could easily say that he was in violation of this policy. It says officers should consider the facts and circumstances known at the time of the confrontation when determining the amount of force to use, including the severity of the subject's crimes, which in this case was a traffic violation. The immediate threat posed by the subject to the safety of others. Well, the others in this case were actually holding the subject down. And whether the subject exhibits active aggression or is actively resisting arrest. Officers are permitted to use whatever force that is necessary and reasonable to protect others and themselves from bodily harm. It says officers shall never use force or violence that is unprovoked, needless, or not required during performance of their duties when making an arrest or in dealing with a prisoner or any person. Now, let's go to the body-worn camera. You failed to activate your body-worn camera during the first encounter with the involved citizen on the traffic stop. Your body-worn camera was functioning properly and did not record the use of force incident in its entirety. At some point, you also took the body-worn camera off your duty vest and placed it in your unmarked vehicle. Your actions place you in violation of DR 101 compliance with regulations. And this is in regards to body-worn camera, which states use of the body-worn camera during the shift. An officer shall at all times. Actually, let me skip one. Let me go down to this one that they have in bold, because I think that that is the one that they're saying he violated. Number 2, officers shall activate their body-worn camera when responding to all calls for service prior to making the scene of a dispatch call. And they already stated that he did not have his on the whole time. And the next piece after this is, you will start it as soon as possible. Let's go down to the next piece that they have in bold. Once a recording event begins, the body-worn camera shall remain activated until the event has concluded in order to conserve the integrity of the recording. And that goes back to this piece up here where they say at the top that at some point he took it off and put his duty vest in his unmarked vehicle. So that's why they are saying he violated that. And then they have some information here about when it doesn't have to be used. All right. So then you have the signature there by the charging officer. And then we'll move to the next page here, signatures. Okay, so this was the administrative summons here for the case. The allegation: you used excessive and unnecessary physical force to apprehend a non-violent subject during a traffic stop where the person sustained critical injuries and later expired. Your on-duty conduct was unprofessional, and you neglected your duty to render aid and provide viable details to the emergency medical personnel. You also had a duty to intervene when you observed the excessive force conducted by a member of your team. You failed to record the vehicle stop on your body-worn camera, and you provided an untruthful and oral statement. So those are the same charges I listed before. This was the hearing date. The hearing date was scheduled January 20th there. That is signed. Let's scroll to the next page. Hearing summary form. The person that you see there, Lieutenant Jessica Cage Rosario, has generally been the same person who has appeared in some of these other cases involving this. It sounds like this person may be with the Memphis Police Association. Here was the statement of the hearing officer and then the actions that were ordered. So for each one of these charges of violations of department policy, for each of these, it was sustained. And as you can see, it says there, termination was ordered for all of them. And then for the one regarding the body worn camera, that was the one with the 40-day suspension. And then, of course, you have some information here about their ability to appeal and their ability to file a grievance. And then you have the statement here, and it talks a little bit about the administrative summons being served. He signed that he signed acknowledging receipt and was provided a copy. Then after that, you see the same information. Now, this next information is everything that you saw that was presented before. So that was generally the facts of the case there, the information regarding his personal conduct, where it's stated this piece about him being not truthful regarding the blows. Then you had the part where he neglected his duty, is what they said. He didn't intervene. And that's all of that. And then you have the unnecessary force piece and the body camera. So all of this we already saw, but it's included as part of the hearing information. And the other piece I wanted to point out too is you can see that they have him initial each one of these pages. So here is this statement that was provided by Lieutenant Cage Rosario, and this is included in all of the packages for each of these officers. And I actually did a separate video that just talked about this due process claim that they were saying was not provided. And I want to read this part to you. I don't know if it's a separate letter in here. And I think an officer, Preston Hemphill's, I think maybe his wasn't separate. Somebody it wasn't separate, but for most of the first 5 officers who were terminated, I do believe there was a separate letter, but I want to go over here. To whom it may concern, the Memphis Police Association objects to the Memphis Police Department's decision to proceed with the administrative hearing prior to the conclusion of the administrative investigation, or TBI investigation. So basically what they're saying is a reasonable amount of time, according to this MOU, a reasonable amount of time to review the statement of charges is to be given to the representative prior to the hearing. And what they were saying was, upon review, several pieces of proof were either omitted from the file or incomplete at this time. Body-worn camera video, which was referenced multiple times in the statement of charges, was not provided to the MPA representative, nor were statements from other principal or witness officers. Remember, there were a whole lot of other people who were on the scene too, and they're saying they didn't get this. And they're saying these are but a few examples of the gross violations of this officer's right to due process. And again, you can go back and take a look at the video that I did that just talks about this letter only. But let's get to the conclusion here. It says, in conclusion, the hearing officer carefully reviewed all documents related to each alleged violations of the listed DRs by Officer Martin, including the Garrity statements for all of the charged officers and the response to resistance forms. The Garrity statements made by you and other charged officers are not consistent with each other and are not consistent with the publicly known injuries and death of Mr. Nichols. Hearing officer additionally considered the statement made by Lieutenant Cage Rosario, which is what I just went over. And so again, you can see that they have, again, the sustained termination for each of those charges. And then, of course, for the last one, which is the 40-day suspension, all of that is listed there. Then we get to this last memorandum that generally says that the administrative hearing for Officer Martin was held, which date, what time, what the charges were, and then again, the outcome of that. So that is it. That is the full package that was provided by the city for Emmitt Martin when they released this sort of 100, I think it was 104 pages of information about what they have so far. Now, this has been a while. This is I think we're maybe a month out from this. I'm sort of tackling one of these at a time and then looking at some of the information that's in some of these so that we can talk a little bit more in depth about them. But if you're now up to speed on Emmitt Martin and what happened with him on January 7th with the incident involving Tyre Nichols, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. If you've gotten some of that information, you have a better understanding of what happened and what is going on. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and stick around. Peace.